Okay, so welcome everybody to Knowledge Bites webinar. And this is one that we love to do annually, really, which is the one where we talk about submitting projects for consideration for inclusion in the CEDS and also the regional priority project list. So we've tried to streamline those two processes. So what we're going to do today is talk about the CEDS in general, the new CEDS that we're working on, and then kind of run you through how to submit your project and the difference between the two kind of submission channels that we have, the RPP list, Regional Priority Project List, and the CEDS. So hosting this Zoom today is the Southern Vermont Economy Project, which is a program of BDCC that works across Bennington and Windham County, so the entire Southern Vermont zone. And we receive partial funding through the USDA through a Rural Community Development Initiative grant. So we are here to help you build your capacity to do important projects and community projects. And this is a big part of that. So with us today, we have Jonathan Cooper from the Bennington County Regional Commission. We have Laura Sibilia and Rachel Shields Ebersole from Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. And we also have Owen Perry on the line from BDCC, who is going to be the one who would be fielding questions about Windham County Regional Priority Project List. So he's here to answer any questions that might come up about that, and just also wave a hand so you know if you send him an email who that's going to. So I think, Rachel, if you want to go to the next slide. What we're going to do, Laura is going to start us off by just talking about the CEDS a little bit, sort of what it is, and then we're going to go into the maybe why we ask you to submit projects to it. We can pause there for questions, and then we're going to talk about the difference between the Regional Priority Project List and the CEDS, and again, we'll pause for questions. Then Jonathan will run us through the draft objectives and strategies for the CEDS, which is currently under construction, so everybody kind of understands what those are about. And then Rachel will just take us into how you get into the actual form to submit your project, and we'll see, we'll pause again for questions. So if you have questions, we'll pause a couple of times to let you ask those. If you're the kind of person who can type and listen at the same time, you can also feel free to drop questions into the chat, and then I'll make sure that we bring those up at the right time. But also feel free just to jot them on your page, and we'll stop several times. Okay, so Laura, if you would take it away, just quickly introduce yourself and talk to us about what the CEDS is. Laura, just unmute yourself. Sorry, I muted everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it is afternoon. Laura Sibilia, Director of Regional Economic Development Strategies for the BDCC, working on our third CEDS. This is my favorite project that we do. CEDS is a federally prescribed process for creating a 5-year strategic economic development plan. It requires us to gather data, examine our data, assess our weaknesses, opportunities, strengths. It requires us to go out to the public and understand what the residents' and businesses' goals are, and using all of that information to develop a strategic action plan. The CEDS also newly requires us to make sure that we have strategies around economic resilience, so disruptive events like COVID, for instance, climate resilience, workforce development, and equity. Okay, next slide. You can find information about our past CEDS, our strategies, the projects that we solicit every year, as we are doing this year, what those projects have been, our reporting to the EDA about our CEDS updates at the southernvermontzone.com, or sovermontzone.com, excuse me. The value of submitting a project to the CEDS. There are multiple values. A CEDS, many places create a CEDS simply because you have to have one for certain types of projects to receive certain types of federal funding. We are pretty unique in this region. We actually work our CEDS. Some places they do go and sit on a shelf In addition, we check in on projects every year. So projects are able to resubmit, update their projects year over year, and then we also accept new projects every year. The value of doing of submitting a project is that it helps the rest of the region understand what you're up to, what your goals are. It informs potential partners, potential investors, and it helps organizations like us in the Wyndham Regional Commission and the state understand who may need some assistance or might be ripe for different opportunities. The big rule with CEDS projects is they can't be what we call somebody oughta, meaning it's got to be your project that you have responsibility for, that your organization is standing up, not, somebody ought to do something about that problem over there. So that's it. I love this process. It's so great to see all the projects that people are working on. We are unique in Southern Vermont in gathering these, and I think it really helps us develop another layer of cohesion. And so we have in Vermont, and I think Owen will be taking this, or who's taking the RPP? Is it Owen?
I think you could take a
Okay,
stab at it, and
great.
Jonathan can add, and Owen can add anything. Before we get to the RPP process, I just wanted to see, do we want to take a little pause here? Does anyone have questions about why to submit a project to the CEDS? I mean, even what kind of projects? I think Laura touched on, you have to own the project. You have to be, part of a partnership that's doing it. It can't be someone else ought to do this. But other than that, I think it's a pretty wide open, but we're happy to answer questions about, what kind of projects we're looking for if people have those. If not, we can move on and talk about the RPP regional priority project process.
I will note with the CEDS project, you do need to make a nexus to between your project and the CEDS. I have yet to see a project that was unable to do that. So in addition to the CEDS projects, which have a fairly low threshold for entry, you're working on it, it's a project, you're able to articulate it and help us understand what you're doing. You're likely to be included in our CEDS update. In addition, the state of Vermont is conducting what is called a regional priority projects process. And maybe we should go to that slide. This is a state mandated collection, and it requires a greater level of detail. It requires you to be further down the road in terms of your project execution. And it does also require you to be aligned with the region's priorities, goals, and objectives. It is the regional priority projects have a separate scoring team. You are able to access all of the questions around regional priority projects through through the CEDS public submission process. So both projects process can be accessed from the same website. These projects, the state has identified this process so that it has a list of high priority projects. This is limited. I believe it's 10 projects plus one project that is of state significance or that is a state level project for each region. And that list helps inform the state of Vermont's prioritization of projects for the Northern Borders Regional Grants. So you can have your project be included in the CEDS and submit for consideration for selection for RPP. And again, that's a higher bar for the RPP. Owen, did you have anything that you want to add that we've missed?
Well, can I just say it's the same form. You just, if you want consideration for the RPP, you check a box that says yes, and it will open up a few more questions to ask for a little bit more detail. So it is the same form, it's the same link, it'll use a lot of the same information, but for the RPP, we just need a little bit more detailed information.
Owen,
we can take a look at
you wanted to add to that?
No, you're good. I think you covered everything there.
Great, thanks. Okay, Meg, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. I have a question here, which is a great question. So how small or big a project is possible? How many people that need to benefit from each project? If it's a small number of people directly benefiting, but a specialized project, more indirect people benefiting, can that work? Does someone want to take that? Or that's a question that's in the chat about what kind of projects.
There is no minimum number of people that need to benefit from a project. The idea for the CEDS is that it is open to all the efforts that are ongoing across Southern Vermont that align with the objectives, which we will talk about in the subsequent slides. And so dimension, magnitude is something that comes across perhaps as you respond to those questions, but there's not a threshold or a ceiling, et cetera, for that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Basically, the answer is yes, submit your project. If you have ownership of it and you can say, I'm the person that's going to be responsible for completing it, then that's wonderful. And you will be asked there's a lot of questions about what area your project benefits, and that's fine. That's just informational. So is that a single town, multiple towns, all of one region, across Southern Vermont, but it doesn't matter. We do a ranking where we select 10 vital projects. And again, for those, it doesn't, sometimes those have been for a specific community, but like really important and impactful. Sometimes those are broader regional plans. All right, so Jonathan is going to take us through the very exciting objectives and strategies from the new 2024 draft zone CEDS is in progress.
So to include, we'll be going through that submission form a little later during this webinar with Rachel. So you'll get a good look at just as Meg was discussing, like how that would come through and sort of in response to that query. But the big part about submitting a CEDS project, the biggest part is how does it align with the objectives of the comprehensive economic development strategy? This year is a slightly different year for this because we are bringing in that new CEDS that's in development right now. And that's sort of an exciting process where we're kind of doing both of these things at the same time. We had a lot of opportunities to discuss these 4 objectives that we are going to go through right now, both through interviews and stakeholder groups, focus groups, and then broader public input sessions. So these are different for those of you who are well-versed in CEDS's past and present, these are similar to, but not identical to, objectives in those previous documents. The first one here is to address our critical population needs for the future. And for each of the 4 objectives that we've identified, there are a series of strategies that would help us meet that objective. And so for this objective, we identified 4. And so, but one of the things, so each of these moves at sort of attacks the issue from a different approach. One is about investing in community assets that are attractive to young people. One is about targeted attraction efforts that would bring people with needed skills to our region. The third is about increasing the diversity in our population. And the fourth is about policies that improve and strengthen both care and education programs. And as you sort of are looking and listening to these objectives and sort of thinking them through, there's a lot of projects that are ongoing right now that would fit into that would be meeting that objective. Perhaps it's the work of the ECDC multicultural centers that have been welcoming new Vermonters, new Americans to Southern Vermont. Perhaps if you're familiar with Bennington, investments that are ongoing in a skate park that's downtown as an asset that's attractive to young people, but assets can also be conceptual, like a young professionals network that's emerged in the Brattleboro and the Bennington areas that are about giving people the connections that they need to stay, to want to be here and to stay here. But also care and education systems are not just about young people. Care systems and education systems can be about education for workforce, for existing for people within the workforce that are looking for new careers. It can be about care for our older population and some of the specialized needs that they may have as they look to age in place and contribute, their vital and valuable presence to our region. So as we move through these objectives, you'll see a lot of different ways of addressing it, and that's by design. the more narrow it gets, the harder it is to have projects that fit within that objective. Our second objective then is to empower businesses to thrive long-term. And this is really at the heart of a lot of economic development across the country, but it's an important component where we have so many small businesses. By the federal definition, I think goes up to 500 employees, and that's most every business in Southern Vermont. But where we live, we have an even smaller amount of your employees per firm, and people are bringing ideas into the marketplace all the time. So we want to enhance the business potential for growth. And that does not need to be at a mom and pop scale. We want to strengthen the entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem. I know some people on this call are sole proprietors and are sort of finding a niche that they're looking to fill, to grow, to expand into new product lines. And we want to establish that collaborative regional workforce development system. We work very closely with our partners at the Department of Labor, and a lot of labor programs are from a vintage that are addressing a status quo of the past, and we're looking to work with them in innovative ways to make sure that our newest Vermonters or people that are getting back into the workforce after some years in retirement are finding the supports they need to seamlessly integrate. And people don't have to be working at the Department of Labor or the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation or the Bennington County Regional Commission to be a part of that. And that's a big part of what we're doing with the CEDS, is we're kind of making it clear that economic development is a public process and that we all partake of it in our own fashion. Our third objective is about fostering resilient and adaptable communities. And this language is very intentional, as the United States Economic Development Administration has made it a requirement for all CEDS henceforth to explicitly address resilience. And that doesn't look the same in every community across the country. And that's by design. The CEDS process is not paint by numbers. It's meant to be a generative process within a given region that's creating a CEDS. And so the way that they're asking us to approach resilience is through our own lens of what matters most. As you might imagine, low-lying areas along the southeastern New England might be thinking about resilience and infrastructure with respect to sea level rise. And it may be different in upland communities, in Colorado. But we want to invest in infrastructure and systems upgrades that will reduce and mitigate climate change impacts. And there's a whole variety of ways that can be approached. We're looking at increasing housing options for all incomes and at all ages. We want to improve the civic and community engagement. That's something we discussed in our previous CEDS. You'll see some through lines from the last 5 years into the next 5 years. And we want to specifically reinforce the recreation and cultural opportunities that have provided our sort of sense of identity and place across Southern Vermont. Our final objective, promoting regional economic development cooperation, involves two strategies that are to be understood as belonging to the public. First, we want to strengthen the structures that support the implementation of a CEDS. And that seems a little wonky, but the point of the language is that a comprehensive economic development strategy needs to be implemented so that it is not forgotten about. And it's really an either or. You can't be implemented and be irrelevant. And if you're not being implemented, you are irrelevant. And that's not just done by the regional planning and regional development corporations. That belongs to a number of organizations and individuals. So working closely with downtown advocacy groups, working closely with regional chambers of commerce, with local chambers of commerce, with housing development agencies, with the private sector. We need to show across our region that we can add value to the projects that require teamwork, and that seems to be more and more of them. And we can also make sure that what we're doing is providing or setting the table for the development that we wanted to see in our economic, our innovation ecosystem that requires access to space, whether it's small scale, large scale. These are some of the most important things that we've identified and that our consultant, Camoin Associates, has identified through their sort of public input process and their interview process. So all projects align with at least one of these objectives, and they will do that, and as project submitters, as Rachel will show us, have the opportunity when they're submitting their project to see how best does my work align with these 4 objectives. Our next slide, I believe, unless there's questions there, Meg, do you want to pause?
I was going to say, maybe, do we want to pause? Do people have questions about those? I know some people may have been at some of the public meetings that we've had where we discuss these. But I think one question you might have is, do I have to have alignment with every single one of these objectives? And clearly the answer is no, because different projects are going to fall in different places. But again, we try and make them broad enough that there is a broad application to really make room for people, but you certainly don't have to check every single box. So as you're going through, in the form, we can take a look at it, but you're asked to sort of, these are, each objective is sort of its own question, and then you can check the box of like, which ones do I feel like I line up with, and then you have a chance to just give a brief summary of how you align with that. There also is a box that says, I'm in alignment with this objective, but not in a different, I feel like it's a different way than is named in these strategies. And that is also okay, because again, we send an update every year of our CEDS, and as there's room or new developments or things like that, there's room to say, I am doing something that's fostering a resilient, adaptable community. I don't feel like it's exactly in the way that's named in the CEDS, and I'm going to tell you how it is, and that is perfectly okay. So having said all that, does anyone have questions about these objectives or strategies? And we can go back if we need to look at those. Okay, it sounds like people are pretty good with those. And again, feel free to email questions or comments. So I think our next step then is to, Rachel could just talk about how we're interacting with people who may have previously submitted, and then we'll take it away looking at the form and bringing up questions about that. So take it away, Rachel.
Okay. So a lot of you, I recognize your names or organizations. You have submitted a CEDS project before. If you submitted one last year, you should have gotten a link that contains all of your previously submitted information. So you can just go and update that and press submit again this year. It makes it a little bit streamlined. Obviously, we hope you've made some progress in your project. Probably some things have changed, but at least you don't have to, type the overall description all over again, because that's probably about the same. So if you submitted previously and you have not gotten that link to update your prior submission, definitely reach out to me and I will make sure that that link lands in your inbox. All right, so this is how you get to the form. You go to SoVermontZone.com. You click on Submit a CEDS project. And we're doing this webinar right now. Projects are due on the 15th, so we got about 2 weeks to submit. And then you click this button to go to the submission form itself. I am going to stop sharing that for a moment so that I can take you to the live form and walk you through it. And if you have questions as I'm going through, maybe raise your hand so Meg can see that. I might not see it because I'm looking at this form here. All right, so here's my project submission form. Gives you a little bit of an overview of, what we're doing here. Gives you contact information for the folks that you might need to get in touch with. We got some pretty basic stuff here. Project name, one thing I'll say is, make this kind of simple. Somebody who's never heard of your project before will know what you're talking about when you type in a name here. So for instance, Jonathan was talking about the skate park. So Bennington Skate Park is a great project name. Something wordier that's a little bit more vague, like project to improve the lives of young people in Bennington through a skate park. Not as good. You'll want to have, the organization that's responsible for the project. If it's you as a person, that's fine. And we want to know about the general region that your project encompasses. You don't get more points for encompassing more geography. So this is really just to give us an idea of where your potential and planned impact is. Now, if you want to have your project considered for inclusion in the regional priority project list, you say yes, and you have to affirm that you do have a budget and sources and uses that you can upload later on in the form. If you don't have those things, then you may not be far enough along in your project to be considered for the RPP list. We definitely still want you to submit for for the CEDS. And it's fine if you don't have these things for the CEDS. So give us a general idea of the category of your project. We'd like to have a brief description. Again, the people who are reviewing your project, you know, there's, I think, 18 people, community members from across both counties, different industries, different community organizations who will be reviewing your project. And at least some of them will not have heard of your project. So just start from the beginning, give us a really brief, succinct description, starting from scratch for somebody who's never heard of your project before. Partners and investors, these are people that you're working with to get the project off the ground, people who are funders. You can list potential funders if you have some folks in mind but haven't approached them yet, but just to give us an idea of who is involved in this project with you. All right, project stage. These are sort of outlined here. I'll let you read them, but you don't get more points for being further along for CEDS. You might get more points for the RPP, but really just, it's okay to be in the beginning process of a project. We're glad to know about it. So don't feel shy about saying you're just in the beginning if that is the case.
And can I just break in quickly and say,
Yes,
I will
please.
say for the regional priority projects, you should be at least in stage 2, if
Thank you.
not in stage 3. So stage 3 is often the ideal range for those regional priority projects. And basically you're ready to start the outward facing work. You've got, you know, sort of more shovel ready. You've got things like engineering. You've got things like architectural. And then Rachel, if you don't mind, CJ had a great question in the chat. If you would just scroll up to the project description section. So CJ was basically saying, you know, that's not a lot of characters. It's 800 character limit. What I will also say is there's sort of 2 pieces of the project description section where there's a brief description of your project, and then there's also the project purpose and benefit. And I think a lot of times people include things like purpose and benefit in their project description. So you can really break those 2 sections out, and that gives you a little more room. You know, it's not a lot. We're looking for these to be pretty brief. So just give us the cliff notes. I think there's places to upload additional information further in the form. So if you have a more detailed piece of writing that you'd like to include that describes your project in more detail, you can add that later in the form. For this is really just to help the people that are getting familiar with the project reviewers saying, okay, let's just quickly, what is this project? What is the purpose? Why are we doing it? And who does it benefit? Or what's the benefit to the region, right? So those should just be sort of the cliff notes, and you can add more down the road. Okay, that is, I think, all we had for here. And I had a great question from Cindy, is if we could upload a PDF of the questions to the website. And I believe that should not be a problem for us just to download the form as a PDF. Is that correct, Rachel? Can we download a blank form and then we can post that? So then if people want to write those in a shared document or something before entering it, you can do that. You can also save the form and go back into it. So if you're co-writing it with more people in the team, you can always save and then get that link, and anybody can get that. Anyone who has that link could get back into your form and resubmit. So 2 ways if you're working on it as a team, but I think we can get that up to the website. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, and I will say it's very easy to save as you go. So yeah, so I would take advantage of that. You don't have to have it all prepped and ready to go before you submit the form. But it would be great if you would proofread or have someone on your team proofread your submissions. I know it can be easy to make typos when you're typing in these little boxes. So just word to the wise, that definitely helps your project look a little more polished. All right, so timeline and milestones. This can be really basic. You know, we're planning on, this is the thing we're going to do next month. This is the thing we're going to do next year. If you have a document with that already, you can upload it here. So we do need to have your timeline and milestones, but you can either type it or upload it. Measurable outcomes. This is something that will be needed for the regional priority project consideration. Again, you can upload it or pop it in the box. For RPP, they'll also want to know a little bit more about the experience of your team. Again, that gives you a place to upload more information if you like. Here we come to what Jonathan was talking about with the objectives. If your project does not align with an objective, you can click not applicable, but you can also, check multiple boxes in an objective category if you like, and then just tell us briefly, how does your project align with these objectives and strategies? The budget is another place where you can either give us a pretty basic typed out budget or upload a file. If you're further along in the process, you likely have a budget already, so no need to reinvent that, just upload what you already have. The sources and uses document is something that you need if you are applying for the RPP consideration. We've got a template here if you need one. And we also need you to specify your funding sources for RPP. So again, if you are not doing the RPP, this form is a lot simpler, but we just want to have you see everything that's on here.
I was going to say, maybe we could, I'm sorry to just break it. I was just saying, maybe we could uncheck the RPP box at the end and just review what's needed just for the CEDS submission. So right now you're looking at everything you might need for RPP submissions. So then we can just maybe take a really quick, just uncheck that box and quickly spin through. So Rachel's just doing an example of like funder 1 is applied for, expected commitment date, type of funding, and can you use that for federal match or not? So this is just, again, if you're doing for RPP, this would not be required for a CEDS project submission. It does not want as much detail. So we'll go through at the end and maybe uncheck the RPP box and just quickly look at what that looks like separately.
Sure. Job creation, this is another RPP question. Again, you don't have to create jobs to be considered for RPP. It's just one of the factors that's considered. And then at the very end, as Meg alluded to, you can upload any supporting information if you have, studies or photos or a project description or an investor brochure, anything like that that you feel like you'd like the project review committees to see. You're welcome to share that with us. Again, here's that all important save button. Save as you go, save as you go. You can save it as many times as you like. You can come back to it as many times as you like. And if you accidentally hit submit before you're ready, just reach out to me and I can unsubmit it for you so you can keep working on it. All right, so let me come back up here and uncheck these RPP lists and show you the form does get a lot shorter. We still need project category and description and then partners and stage. Oh, let's see. Let me see if I can, maybe I need to refresh. Okay, and then we still need the alignment with CEDS objectives. As Jonathan said, that's kind of the heart of the whole process of saying, my project is a CEDS project. Still need a little bit about your budget, and then we still have the additional information uploads, but it is a lot simpler if you're not feeling ready to apply for that RPP consideration. All right, I'd love to take questions now if we have time, Meg, to have any questions about the form.
Yes, we definitely have some time. And just another question that we've answered in the chat, but just to bring it up again, CJ King asked, are letters of support helpful? I think you could attach those, as particularly for RPP consideration. Those are helpful. You can certainly include those as additional attachments, just to show that you've got documented support. So you can certainly do that. Alicia is asking, can organizations submit more than one project? Wholehearted, yes, you can, absolutely. And I'm just trying to think of any other, I mean, like letters of support are fine. More than one project is great. That's absolutely fine to submit more than one. Any other questions in the chat? Questions about regional priority projects, questions about the CEDS? I think we are going to quickly talk about the kind of vital project ranking and how that happens before we wrap up. But before we go do that, just any other questions about the form, any concerns. We'll also give contact information. So we are here and we're ready to answer questions over email if you get into it and you get hung up. So we'll go over that at the end. But any other questions about the form itself and what you need to have?
Yes, this is Guy Payne from Sion.
Hi,
Hi, Guy.
we got you.
Hi. I'm just curious as to what is the point of filing a phase one when maybe folks aren't really ready? What is the outcome of doing that?
Laura or Jonathan, do you want to answer that? Or yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah,
You have
I
to
think
unmute. Yeah, there you go.
if you you know, our regional organizations are here to really help folks that are working on projects, that are working on the economy, municipalities, community organizations, businesses, associations, etc. And so submitting that project, it gets you in the queue talking first off to Rachel, Meg, and Jonathan, and that may secure you, you know, connections to others who can help you with your project. So phase one, it's really about getting more technical assistance and getting this on folks' radar. That's what I would say.
Okay.
And potential funders' radar, so that this is something that someone is out working on.
Okay, we're looking at a registered apprenticeship program for a high performance builder. So there's a lot of preliminary stuff we need to pull together in terms of designated space and budget. So that would be good to have the technical support. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting and exciting project. It definitely is in alignment with the goals. Okay, so let's see. Any other questions about projects specifically?
Pam, I see you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Great. Great. Okay. I think Jonathan, do you want to just speak to briefly what's the review and ranking for the CEDS project? So we did allude to the fact that these projects are reviewed, and you know, there's a ranking process where we select some vital projects. So Jonathan, you want to just talk about what that means and how we do it?
So one of the, thank you, Meg. And so one of the parts of this process, which is filled with a lot of enjoyable parts for us, one of these is the review committee. And this is a group of people from around Southern Vermont, and it is not just the staff of the organizations that are hosting this webinar today. We're there to support the process, to answer questions people may have. But we have a peer committee each year that we draw upon to review something upwards of 90 or more submissions of projects that are submitted through the CEDS portal that we've been describing earlier today. And this is a really valuable way for us to draw on the sort of the deep knowledge of people active in the whole spectrum of industries here in the region, people active in public policy and finance, real estate or insurance, people in healthcare fields, people with their own small businesses, sole proprietors, people working in the public sector. It's a really broad group, and they are drawn from around the region. So we have a lot of different perspectives on these projects. These are people who are living, working, and contributing to the same economy and the same communities that the proposed projects are benefiting. We draw from both sides of the region, or for all corners of the region, I should say, with a lot of wide range of interest and expertise. And this means that a lot of the conversations that come out of the review process, and then the sort of the meetings that take place of members of this review committee, are they're pretty lively and pretty informed by people's backgrounds, and there's a lot of questions, and that's why it's helpful for us to be there to field whatever we can. So the information that you are putting into these submissions is going to real people who are learning about these projects for the first time, people who may live in another portion of the region and are unfamiliar with with your work or with your intended sort of target audience. So it's really valuable to bear in mind that this is sort of a everyman process, both in terms of who's submitting projects and then who's reviewing them. And so that's like a good thing to bear in mind as you're putting together your narrative, that it's going to be going to some people who maybe are just hearing about your organization for the first time. And I'm happy to continue talking about the submission timeline. So we are soliciting projects on an accelerated timeline this year. We're going to be having to cut it off on October 15th. So that we can give our reviewers enough time to digest what they've been given, and then meet to discuss in a couple of different touch points to come up with that vital project ranking through the end of November, releasing those rankings, or those having that sort of final announcement about the vital projects, which they're usually about 10 at the end of December. So that's an alignment with the sort of imposed deadline from the regional priority project list, but it also works very well for our CEDS work and the sort of draft CEDS that we're submitting to the EDA for review. So this all is a couple of different timetables that are harmoniously converging, but it does mean that we're putting out the word right now for the project submissions. You probably have seen them perhaps in the Brattleboro Reformer, the Bennington Banner, and other media outlets, that we're trying to get as much of that in at this point so that we have as much time as possible to sort of segment those projects out to our review team and then set up some times for them to meet. Are there other details about the timetable that maybe people had questions about, or that I didn't address adequately?
I think that's great. We're having a great discussion in the chat about what happens, the sort of interplay of the form, if you select whether you want to be included for RPP consideration and so on. So there's some conditional questions in there. So if you check, yes, I'd like to be submitted for RPP, I think you need to make sure that you've selected your region, because the questions will be slightly different according to the region. And then you also have to answer the next question, which says, before you move forward with RPP submission, do you have certain things? I think that's site control, a detailed budget, and one other thing that you're supposed to have. And if you don't answer yes to those things, it's going to say, sorry, you can't do that. Go back and select no, and then carry on. And then it will open up just the CEDS questions for you. So that was just a way for you to gut check, do I have what's actually going to be needed for that consideration? And if you don't have those things in hand, you will just go back and just submit it as a CEDS project. Does that make sense? So you could just say, okay, maybe next year. And then we have another question in the chat of what happens if your project is selected. So someone want to take that? Like, what happens if you're a vital project? And then what happens if you're selected for the regional priority project list? Anyone want to take that question,
Sure.
Jonathan, maybe?
So we'll start with the
Or-
vital projects of the CEDS. The vital project designation sort of gives us an opportunity to celebrate those 10 projects. All the projects that are submitted are included in the CEDS as an annual report that we provide to the EDA as an example of the projects, the ways in which the CEDS is being implemented throughout the region. For those vital projects, we sort of celebrate them in a press release we provide to the designees sort of ahead of time, so that they're aware that we'll be championing their projects. One of the most important things in economic development is that you have to celebrate the things that you want more of. And so we'd like to be able to celebrate the project committee, the CEDS project committee's belief in these 10 vital projects for our region. And that is something that, as we discussed earlier on, like, what's the value of submitting a project to the CEDS? That applies to all, but if you are one of those vital projects, this is something more that you can use as you're sort of ginning up your own, momentum, and sort of use as a building block for demonstrating the project's value, either to potential funders or to members of the community, or however you wish to do so. With the RPP lists, those are sent along, those 10 from each county, or like each service area. So there's one for the Bennington region, there's one for the Windham region, Those lists are sent along to Christy Farnham at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And then if, for example, when we're applying for Northern Borders Regional Commission funding, which is like a separate thing, that's an eligibility sort of cutoff. Like that's a thing you can now do because you were on the RPP list. And the state then also provides us with a little bit of feedback. And that's something, so we notify the designees and then subsequently sort of function as a channel between the state and the project for any subsequent inquiries, opportunities the state wants to make known to some of the 10 RPP designees. If there's any colleagues who wish to add to that, I'm happy to pass the mic.
I think that's great. And I think just to reiterate, all projects in any stages are going to be listed as part of the CEDS update or included in our submission that goes to the EDA every year that sort of says, here's the work that's happening in our region that is in alignment with the CEDS. So whether or not you're a vital project, whether or not you're on the RPP list, your project is valuable to us. And, we also often have heard from people that going through and doing that process and establishing in their mind and just writing down how their project is in alignment with regional goals was really, really helpful for them as they went out and sought funding or got partners or even just talked to their community about their project. So, we think that, being able to say, hey, my project is doing a thing that's important to a lot of people and we're advancing some things is useful for you. And then, we actually often get in contact with projects that we've seen and help sort of bring you into the fold of work that we're doing so that, you can access resources that we're making available as well. So at any level, it's really valuable to just be in touch with us and to be part of that. So I think we're basically have tried to keep this under an hour. So, but we do, if people want to, if people have additional questions on the screen, we've got the contact for questions. I'm going to post this recording today, so that'll go to, and I'll share it with anybody who registered or attended, and also get that up onto the CEDS project submission website. So there'll be a link on there, and these people's contacts are on there. So just Rachel is intaking the project, so she's a great person to contact about your project submission. So if you have any questions about like the form or something isn't working for you, the form, Rachel's a great contact. For questions and clarifications about the RPP project submission, if you're in Windham County, you can send it to propertymanager@brattleborodevelopment.com, and that'll actually go to both Owen, who's on this call, and Al Clausen, our real estate manager, and they'll be able to help you. So again, any questions about the form or is this information okay, you can go to them. If you're in Bennington County, Jonathan is going to be collecting those RPP projects for Bennington County. So he would be the person to ask on that side, since those are done by the regional development corporations. Those sort of go by region. And if you're not sure which region you're in, reach out to Rachel and she'll get you to the right person. So these are all people you can reach out to. We're all here. We know we only have a couple weeks, so we're all hands on deck to help you get those in. And that's great. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask now or ask us offline.
Well, for the sake of the recording, Meg, I just want to call out CJ's question. CJ mentioned looking at the budget template, and this probably also would be the same for the sources and uses template, just asking if that's the level of detail that we need. So for the CEDS project consideration, we don't need it to be super detailed. Whatever you're working off of is fine. Or if you just want to give us a basic outline typed in the box, that's fine too. For RPP, we do need things to be a little bit more detailed. Again, if you're working on RPP consideration, we imagine you're far enough along in the process that your budget that you're working off of is detailed enough for the submission process. But you're also welcome to just share what you have with Owen and me, and we can let you know if there's more information that we need. Great.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laura and Jonathan, and Rachel and Owen for being here. And let's see, just any other Okay, everyone's saying thank you. So I think we've covered what we need to today. We really thank you. We look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to seeing your projects, and we will post this recording so you can share it with anyone else who needs it. So many thanks to everyone. Thank you so much. We'll hear from you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.